has just been, not good.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Khan with you guys. Yasmin's on Rebel HQ, you know that. You're checking that out every day on YouTube. And then also Modern Context podcast. You know that too, you crazy dog. Okay, so what are we talking about on the show today? A lot. You ready for US citizens to be sent down to a dungeon in El Salvador? Because that is what Trump is promising, yes. But the question is, how are people going to react to that? Is that actually going to happen? How is the right wing reacting to that? Oh, drama, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Israeli thought police on the march. So they've snatched up more people in America for criticizing Israel. One case is enormously egregious, we're gonna get to that a little bit later. And one school fights back, that's super important. Okay, a lot to get to on this show. So Yasmin, what are we starting with?
We're starting with, they're all doozies. Let's just get into this first clip.
But the reality is this wasn't a Maryland father. This was a El Salvadorian man who was illegally in this country, who was affiliated with MS-13.
There is no evidence
Let's set the record straight about who this person is.
There's no evidence that he was a gang member.
With all due respect, he's an illegal immigrant. He was here illegally with deportation orders in 2019. What part of that do you not understand?
I understand the story very well.
All right, so that was last night on NewsNation, and that was anchor Hina Doba, and they had a fiery confrontation with White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields. So the two were going back and forth over the allegations that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13. So Cenk, we have a lot more of that NewsNation interview to show the audience, but how do you think this is gonna go? It already seems very contentious.
Yeah, I appreciated that, a little bit of a throwdown there from the anchor not taking the lies of the Republican. And they're huge lies. Tons of Republicans and right-wing hosts are pushing out these lies. So we're gonna show you the reality here. We're gonna show you the receipts, and we're gonna show you what this guy actually is and what the courts have decided, and we'll show you court documents about it, actual receipts here instead of just nonsense jibber jabber from the other side. So find out for yourself, but let's watch a little bit more and let's see all the details and facts here. Then I'll weigh in more.
Right, so we definitely have those receipts and we will get to them. But yeah, first let's go to the clips. We have two clips to show you from that NewsNation confrontation. In this first clip, Doba and Fields are battling over whether or not Abrego Garcia was actually affiliated with or a part of MS-13. Take a look.
But the reality is this wasn't a Maryland father. This was a El Salvadorian man who was illegally in this country, who was affiliated with MS-13.
There is no evidence
Let's set the record straight about who this person is.
There's no evidence that he was a gang member.
With all due respect, if the Department of Justice has come out and said that he has gang affiliation. So instead of defending this gentleman, talk about who he actually is and talk about the risk in keeping illegal criminals in this country. This is exactly what President Trump was elected to do, to return these people back to their home countries, and that's what he did.
We're not defending him. I'm going to reiterate that is unsubstantiated. There is no evidence of him being a gang member. He is married to a US citizen, and he was in this country legally. Okay, but we don't know if he was
being married does not make you not a gang member.
There's no evidence. We're going to move on. There's no evidence that he was a gang member, and I want to reiterate that to our viewers.
The Department of Justice came out and said there was credible evidence that he was a member or affiliated.
You said he's a gang member, and he wasn't legally allowed to be here, which again, he was legally allowed to be here. and he is married to
You
an
can hold
American
court for
citizen.
him all you want. He's no longer in this country.
All right.
One person, the Americans are safer because of it.
And
All right, so Doba and Fields then fought over Abrego Garcia's immigration status more specifically. So let's look at that.
so right now, the White House seems to be doing nothing about getting him back, and that's fine. I'm going to move on.
He's an illegal immigrant. He was here illegally with deportation orders in 2019. What part of that do you not understand?
I understand the story very well, and I'm going to stop going back and forth with you on this, but I will say, again, he had every right to be in this country. Is there any scenario under which
He did not. He was an illegal immigrant.
We're going to move on
serious?
this.
No, I will not let you go forward.
Okay.
He was an illegal alien in this country with a deportation order in 2019. He is an El Salvadorian citizen. If you are not a citizen of the United States of America here illegally, there are grounds to deport you, in which happened recently.
This again, unsubstantiated. Those are not the facts, but I will move on.
Okay, so here is what has actually been stated in court. Abrego Garcia did grow up in El Salvador's capital city, according to the court documents. His family had been targeted and harassed by a local gang there named Barrio 18. So here's some reporting from AP News on that. When Abrego Garcia was 12, the gang threatened to take him away until his father paid them all of the money that they wanted. The family moved 10 minutes away, but the gang threatened to rape and kill Abrego Garcia's sisters, court records state. So per the court records, Abrego Garcia's family could not go to the authorities because of police corruption, which does track. So the family tried to flee to Guatemala instead, but even after moving to Guatemala, they were still tortured and tormented by the gang. So Abrego Garcia fled to the US illegally around 2011, the year he turned 16, according to documents filed in his immigration case. And in 2019, he went to a Home Depot looking for work when he was arrested by county police, according to court filings. Detectives asked if he was a gang member. So after explaining that he wasn't, he was detained by ICE. And that brings us up there. So Abrego Garcia asked to be released and told an immigration judge that he would seek asylum. So this is more reporting. US ICE, however, alleged that he was a certified gang member based on information that came from a confidential informant used by county police, record state. According to Abrego Garcia's attorneys in his current case, the criminal informant had alleged that Abrego Garcia belonged to an MS-13 chapter in New York where he has never lived. The information was enough for an immigration judge in 2019 to keep Abrego Garcia in jail as his immigration case continued, court records state. The judge said the informant was proven and reliable and had verified his gang membership and rank. All right, so in October of 2019 now, an immigrant judge in Maryland granted Abrego Garcia protection from getting deported to El Salvador due to a well-founded fear of gang persecution. However, his asylum request was denied by that same judge because he did not file it quickly enough. Abrego Garcia was then released from custody and ICE did not appeal. So here's more reporting. Abrego Garcia checked in with ICE yearly while the Department of Homeland Security issued him a work permit. His attorney said in the filings, he joined a union and was employed full-time as a sheet metal apprentice. So he was never charged with or convicted of being a member of MS-13. At no point was he convicted of this. This year, District Judge Paula Zinnes wrote in a court filing that the quote unquote evidence against Abrego Garcia consisted of nothing more than his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and a vague, uncorroborated allegation from a confidential informant claiming he belonged to MS-13's Western clique in New York, again, a place he has never lived. And yet, this is what our Vice President, JD Vance, posted this morning on social media. He said the entire American media and left-wing industrial complex has decided that the most important issue today is that the Trump administration deported an MS-13 gang member and illegal alien, but that's not true. It's just not true, even though it's on Truth Social. So in a Truth Social post last night, President Donald Trump called Abrego Garcia an MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist from El Salvador. So now the question is, what are the Democrats doing about all of this? It's kind of interesting, actually. A group of Democratic senators led by Senator Chris Van Hollen could actually be traveling to El Salvador later this week if Abrego Garcia is not released by then. Van Hollen wants to check on Abrego Garcia's condition and discuss his release with the government of El Salvador. Also, Representative Maxwell Frost pledged his support as well, and he stated that he would attempt to bring along other members of the House. And speaking of the House, last night, Jen Psaki asked Hakeem Jeffries what Democrats can do to help bring Abrego Garcia home. And here is Jeffries' answer.
What, if any, power, for people who are watching at home, do you have? What power do you have and other Democratic members to compel, push the government to bring him home?
Well, we have the power to shape public sentiment, and at the end of the day, making sure that public sentiment in this case understands that the treatment of Mr. Abrego Garcia, is unconscionable, unacceptable, and un-American. And if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere.
Well, that is a lackluster response from Jeffries. If our Congress people are just trying to sway public opinion, they're not doing a whole lot. They're the ones who actually have the power to do something. Whereas, people like us, we're the ones who are trying to sway public opinion in one way or another. And everybody on social media and people just talking to their relatives. That's how those things happen. We need a little bit more from our Congress people. But Cenk, what's crazy to me is that instead of just admitting that their poorly executed plan inevitably resulted in the wrongful deportation of this man, instead, they're just going to criminalize him even further and demonize him in the press and say, no, we were right. This man wasn't supposed to be here in the first place, even though, again, as we just showed our audience, the evidence does not support that.
Yeah, there's two reasons why the Republicans are doing this. There's so much to discuss here. So first reason is Trump's insecurities. So if he made the decision to send this guy down there without due process and without checking, then it must be the correct decision. And we don't care that he's innocent, and we don't care what the courts say. We're just gonna keep him down there in the dungeon. Ha ha! Okay, that's Trump 101. Number two is they pick these fights, but they need the left wing to fight back. And if you're just deporting criminal undocumented folks, there isn't going to be much pushback because most of the country agrees with that, right? So that they need something that creates controversy. So in order to create controversy, they purposely lie, therefore getting the left wing, et cetera, to fight back. And then they pretend to their own voters, oh my God, you see that? The left wing loves these undocumented criminals, and they want to keep the rapists and the murderers and the MS-13 gang guys. You see that? And unfortunately, this is an enormous part of the puzzle. Right-wing media in general helps them. And they lie along with the Republican politicians and the Trump administration so that their audience thinks the guy really is MS-13. And must have committed some grave offense because they saw JD Vance tweet about it. They saw Donald Trump say it. Now all their right-wing media agrees, well then it must be true. And by the way, guys, I unlike a lot of folks on the left, I don't blame those viewers, voters, et cetera, because they were lied to and they don't know that they're being lied to. Some of them do know, and some of them will say on social media, like, I don't care. And he's not a citizen, just do whatever you want with him. You send him to a dungeon, torture him. I don't care, he did something, he didn't do something, he was a criminal, he's not in a gang, I don't care, right? And some say as long as he's undocumented, which is true, then again, then he deserves every fate that he gets, and he was afraid that he was going to be attacked, possibly killed by the gangs in El Salvador that are in that prison. That might kill him. That's why our judges said don't send him to El Salvador, right? And they're like, yeah, but as long as he was undocumented, I don't care. So that portion exists. But a bigger portion got lied to and has no idea what the reality is. Look, I know that Yaz just broke it down for you guys, but I want to summarize real quick. So if you say he's undocumented, no problem, he was undocumented. Okay, and you saw the reasons why. If you say that he was part of MS-13, how much clearer does it have to be that he wasn't? So some informant, obviously lying, said, oh yeah, he was in MS-13 in New York. He hasn't been to New York. He lives in Maryland, has nothing to do with New York. An informant saying that he was an MS-13 to get a lenient sentence or whatever reason that he said it so that he could skate and an innocent guy can go to jail or be deported. Wow, that would be shocking. But again, if you saw it in a court paper, because they copy and pasted it, an earlier court hearing where someone alleged that he was MS-13, I get why you were misled, I get it. But we're showing you here, later court proceedings in 2019 showed that he was not an MS-13, that was a made up allegation. And in fact, he was legitimately scared to death that if he's sent back to El Salvador, that those gangs are the ones that would actually threaten him and potentially kill him. And if you say, I don't care, now that I know the truth, I still don't care. Well, I'm not gonna be able to convince you. And so you're a person who just doesn't care about others and doesn't have any empathy, etc. And I can't ever reach you because the minute you view someone in a different category, then you think the worst things in the world can happen to them. They can get slaughtered by those same MS-13 gang that I claim that I hate. As long as it's not me, I don't identify with the guy, I don't care. Okay, that group, you can't ever get them to say, yeah, we should all treat all human beings the same way, etc., etc. But if you're in the larger group, look, I don't know that a lot of you are gonna see this video, or you're gonna see our posts on social media, etc. But if you're in that group, you should ask the right-wing media and your politicians. And we do it here on the Young Turks, we do it to Democrats all the time. We get tons of flack for it, right? But if you're on the right wing and you're honest, you should ask them, hey, why did you tell me he was an MS-13 when later courts thought that was garbage and didn't think he was an MS-13? And that guy you saw, Harrison Fields, the White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary that we showed you in that NewsNation clip, he said that in 2019, there were deportation orders against him, when in reality, it was the exact opposite. In 2019, the court ruled you cannot deport him. So he's 100% lying. And see, unlike a viewer or a voter that might have heard it somewhere online or in media or whatever, that guy knows, he knows for sure. And JD Vance knows for sure that they're lying. But hey, we want to trick people into thinking that the left wing loves criminals, loves MS-13 gang, and we don't mind lying. And then JD Vance said it about the cats and dogs. And when challenged in an interview, he said, look, that might not be true. So something, words along those lines, but I had to bring your attention to this other issue about gangs in Ohio and undocumented people, etc. So basically he admitted, yeah, we lie in order to get attention to a cause that we want. But you don't need to lie. You already are, that deporting undocumented criminals who are part of MS-13 is already intensely popular. In fact, if you're in the right wing, again, you should be pissed about this because it's taking that popular policy and now making it unpopular. Because people are like, why are we sending innocent people to El Salvador? Why are we sending innocent people to dungeons? And why, by the way, more important than any of that is, why are you ignoring court orders? The court said, do not deport this guy. Now the courts have ruled, earlier courts said don't deport him, so bring him back. Supreme Court says 9-0. Clarence Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, all those guys said the administration must facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. They were unanimous because it was super clear that the president must listen to the courts. And here, the Trump administration comes out and goes, we don't care about the US courts. We don't care about the Constitution. We don't care what's true and not true. All we want to do is lie and demagogue and get not only everybody to hate undocumented folks, whether they're criminals or not criminals, whether they're in a gang or not in a gang or perfectly innocent, and whether they've integrated into society, married an American citizen, have American kids, and said, we don't care about anything. All we want to do is get you to hate. Hate the immigrants, hate the undocumented immigrants, smear them all. And if we got to lie every single day to make that happen, they have no problems with it. And I find that disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And I hate it when our side does things that are demonstrably not true. Joe Biden is young and dynamic. And we call that out. Is there any, and by the way, so look, a lot of right-wing voters will think whatever they think, they might or might not get this information. But if you're in right-wing media and you're still lying about how courts ordered him deported when they ordered the exact opposite. All right, brothers and sisters, that you got to live with yourself, but now you know at least for sure that you're a giant liar for Donald Trump, and you're doing it to demagogue and spread hatred. So have I been clear enough in getting the message out? And to the last point, Yaz, about Hakeem Jeffries and their response. I like Chris Van Hollen's response. That's strong, right? Hakeem Jeffries, we will get the word out. Well, will you? Because that sounded super strong. It sounded like you were really animated about it. Like the guy barely has a pulse. Do something, for Christ's sake. You've got a tiny modicum of power. Try to figure out, at least put some thought into how do I strategize to make a difference here. But with Democratic leadership strategizing, it's way too high a bar, apparently. Back to you, Yaz.
Yeah, Hakeem Jeffries definitely leaves a lot to be desired, to the point where it's like, how did you even elevate to the position that you're in right now? If that's the best he can give us, we need somebody else. Like the future, if he's the future of the Democratic Party, it's looking a little bit dim and dull already, and that's not very encouraging. But to your point, Cenk, about not blaming the people who support these types of moves from the administration, I do get what you're saying, and the only reason that I do have a small modicum of grace for them is exactly what you said. They're being lied to by people that they, for some reason, trust. And I say it's a small amount of grace because at some point, ignorance has to be a choice. And these people who are choosing ignorance are voting for policies and politicians based on these beliefs that they hold, which are based on things that they don't understand. And then other people are suffering for these votes that they're casting. But right-wing media strategy is the same that it has been for so long. They just scare the public with scary words like gangs and terrorists, because fearful people don't care about things like due process. There's no time for any of that stuff when danger is lurking around every corner, when people's lives are being threatened, when gangs are running rampant, or when there's terrorism happening, which is what they're being told. And what's ironic about that is that the most recent incident of terrorism that I've heard of came from that MAGA guy who torched Governor Shapiro's house. I know that's another story, but it is a little ironic. But then there is that other aspect to all of this that you mentioned at the end, Cenk. The Supreme Court unanimously, which never happens, ruled that we need to get this guy back. But now the Trump administration and right-wing media are acting like it's all just diplomatically impossible for the United States to take on this president from El Salvador, as if we haven't done that before. Let's be real. We know our nation's history. We have taken on entire governments before. If we wanted to negotiate a deal to get this guy back from El Salvador, we know we can do that, right? And no one is doubting that the United States can't get somebody back from El Salvador if it really wanted to, but they're acting like, oh, too bad, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, so last two things here. First, Crazy Like a Fox on TYT.com, one of our members on TYT.com, it made a good point here, and it goes along the lines of what I was gonna say, but he has a specific example. He said that misframing is exactly what the Democrats did with Gaza protesters. And that's a great point. And I was gonna use a different example, which is, yes, part of the reason why I give some in the right wing grace when they've heard the wrong information is because how many of our brothers and sisters on the left heard the wrong information from MSNBC and others in the media that Joe Biden was the best possible candidate for Donald Trump? So we were go against Donald Trump, and that he had no mental decline issues at all, that it was a conspiracy theory, and that it was perfectly young and dynamic behind the scenes when we couldn't see it. They got really good people to believe something that was so obviously not true. I mean, Biden couldn't finish sentences. He's mumbling and wandering around, shaking hands with invisible people, talking about how his uncle was eaten by cannibals. And all of the media on the left were gaslighting people to no end. No, not only is he a good candidate to go against Trump, he was the very best candidate to go against Trump. And the reason I was against that is because, not just because I have eyes and ears, but he wasn't the best candidate to go against Trump. If he went against Trump, we were guaranteed a loss. And those good people were being lied to. And ironically, it was helping Trump because they were going to keep a senile man in the race, right? So all those people who didn't believe that Biden was senile, who didn't believe that there was anything wrong with him, they thought he was a great dynamic candidate before the debate, right? They're not bad people. They just got lied to, okay? So in this, you could make a similar argument, not an identical argument, but a similar one for people who are lied to in the right wing. And to our members' point here, on Gaza, did Biden and the Democrats do any better? Bernie did and others did, but overall the Biden administration was like, oh, those protesters, how dare they? They're terrible. And they, now Trump has gone further and he's arresting and deporting them. But Biden helped their propaganda and totally lied about who those protesters were. So I'm tired of both sides lying. You gotta ask better, not just of your politicians, but also of your media. So, and that's what's gotten us into this division. And now the last thing is the depressing part here. We got it in the live chat again. I was curious about it, if you guys got, more pessimistic about it overnight. But we had asked this question yesterday in the live chat. Will Kilmar Abrego Garcia be returned to the US? And only 28% said yes yesterday. Let's see if we can see it in the live chat. Obviously, it shows live at 6 o'clock Eastern. Everybody check it out when you can and participate and be one of our members or not. So right around the same numbers, 30 to 70. Man, if they never return that guy, somebody else wrote in, look, there's some chance that, either Captain Logos wrote in, Abrego Garcia is probably dead. And I don't know if he is or not. That's why Senator Van Hollen from Maryland is going down to check on him. But remember, he was worried that those gangs were going to kill him. That prison is full of MS-13. So we got to get this guy back. And anyone who is in the Trump camp that already knows he's innocent and doesn't mind him dying there, well, those are the people you should have enormous disdain for. It's the height of immorality. It's beyond gross what they're doing to that guy just to protect Donald Trump's feelings and because lying is literally part of their strategy.
Yeah, I think whenever it comes down to it, this is just, it should not have happened in the first place, right? And this is what happens whenever you suspend processes like due process, right? These things are in place for a reason. They are applicable to everybody who is here in this country. We don't know. The reason why we're having this debate as to whether or not he was actually a member of MS-13 is because there was no due process. There was nothing that determined whether or not he was. He was just sent back. And now we're in a situation where we can't really get ourselves out of the situation that we've got ourselves into in the first place. All of this was so completely unnecessary. And I do want to say, for El Salvador, they have had a long history of gang violence and crime. And then Bukele came in there and he's had a lot of human rights violations called out against him from the international watchdogs, right? For years, this has been going on. So this is nothing new. And a lot of people down there, however, and I randomly know a lot of El Salvadorian people. There's a lot here in Houston. One of my best friends is El Salvadorian, so I get some insight there. But and also just from reading reports online, a lot of people defend Bukele and all of this imprisonment of all these people who he says are gang members, also without due process, because they say, it's a little bit nicer here now in El Salvador. It's a little bit safer here in El Salvador. So that is also an argument that we're hearing now from anchors on places like Fox News that, it's better there now because all these people are in jail. And we're gonna get to it in another story a little bit more in detail, but that's an argument that we're hearing that could be applicable now to these people here in the United States who Trump wants to just throw in jail. But before I get ahead of myself, Cenk, that's a whole other story.
Yep, so we're gonna do that story as soon as we return. So if you thought that was bad, Trump is now saying maybe we round up Americans and send them to El Salvador. Does he really mean it? What is the right-wing reaction to that? We'll tell you when we come back.
Frack, frack, frack like a duck. Frack, frack, frack.
On TYT, let's go to YouTube members first. James Simmons writes in, thank you for answering my comment yesterday, Cenk. It means a lot, it makes me feel included. I'm Canadian, but I've been watching a lot of TYT because Trump influences Canada more than I would like. Well, James, thanks for being part of the show, brother. And so, like, I love legitimate questions. And so I'm glad I got a chance to answer it, and thanks for appreciating it. That means a lot. We do Operation Joy tonight, and one of the things that gives me joy is being able to appreciate things, including our wonderful audience and smart, honest folks like you. DataBoy2K writes in, Cenk should redo the voiceover, but just for the haters. Live from TYT Studios, just for you haters, it's the Young Turks. Yeah, no, look guys, don't worry about that either. I'm not worried about the haters, I'm not worried about any of that. Let's go forward, let's do exactly what we think is right. Open minds, open hearts, let's go do the best we can and the correct strategies to win back the country, win elections, and pass bills that matter in your life. If they're stuck in the past, they want to fight some silly battles for whatever reasons that they want to, that's okay. God bless their hearts. And remember, don't ever be upset at their viewers, right? The folks that he's calling the haters and stuff. They all, in my opinion, they also got misled, right? So what do we, no, don't, like I said of the right wing earlier in the show, and like I said of the Democrats who were, tricked into thinking that Biden was young and dynamic, and so they didn't do anything wrong. They're just misled. So let's just win people back over in all of those different camps with being right and trying to do good in the world. So, but I love you guys for caring. Itchy Brother Dragon says, I'm curious what SCOTUS's next step will be. This is on Twitch. Man, me and you both. Because if he truly goes through all the way with it and says, yeah, I know Supreme Court said to bring him back, but I don't care, I'm not going to, I don't care what the Supreme Court says, I'm above the law. Well, then we have a massive, massive constitutional crisis, and I don't know how the Supreme Court's gonna react to that. And I'm not sure what their, range of possibilities are for their actions. So that's going to be a very dramatic moment in American history if it gets to that. Gal471 says MS-13 was trending on Twitter this afternoon, and every post I saw was about Garcia being in the gang. 90% of it was people saying he was in the gang, and then 10% was Cenk saying he wasn't. So, well, that sounds about right for social media. 90% false, 10% true. But thank you for saying I'm the one driving that that fight back on this issue. I appreciate you. Rural says better arrest most of the US during the 1990s. Just about everyone had a bull sweatshirt or hat. Michael Jordan was lit at the time. Yeah, I mean, literally, that was, other than the BS informant, their only other evidence was that he had a Bulls hat and a hoodie. Come on, guys. All right, Jackal Dragon says, safer from what? He didn't commit any crimes against anyone. Great point. Hopeful Heart and Open Eyes says, Yaz-tastic. That's a good one, I like that, I'll take that one. Now in TYT.com, our Hakuna Matata says, don't worry guys, Chuck Schumer won't rest. That's funny. Lou B says, TYT is the place to hear the truth, America, if you dare. Love you guys, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys, but also Vivemus Corvidux. That's a mouthful. Okay, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. They hit the join button below. You can also join on TYT.com. Annual membership gets you a couple of months off. Okay, yes.
All right, kind of a similar story to the last one, but let's get into it.
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the
homegrowns,
the ones that grew up and something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love to do that.
How many times has he seen somebody get pushed into a subway? Anyway, that was President Donald Trump during an interview with Fox Noticias, saying he would love to deport what he is calling homegrown criminals to prisons in El Salvador. And in case it's unclear what he means by homegrown criminals, he's referring to anti-Trump, anti-Israel activists, in other words, people he doesn't like who are exercising their rights to free speech. Cenk, do I have that right?
Yeah, and so This is super dangerous. Now they're coming for US citizens. And I'm intensely curious about how right-wingers are gonna react to this. And we have some evidence to that regard. We'll get to that in a second, including my rage about Trump. But first, let's hear more.
Can't wait for the rage, Cenk. All right, so don't worry. Even though the president is trying to disappear citizens to El Salvador, it's actually really nice down there. That is what I keep hearing from Trump. Take a look.
He's made it a very safe place. People go and they feel very secure and safe. He's also built one, but other also prisons, very big ones, and we're using his system because we're getting rid of our criminals from out of the United States that were allowed to come in by Biden. We're getting them out. And the president is helping us with that, President Bukele. So I was very impressed with him, really very impressed. Great guy.
So the problem with all of this, apart from the incredibly obvious, is that it might not actually be legal to just send people to an El Salvador prison. So here is US Attorney General Pam Bondi being interviewed by Jesse Waters on Fox News. He asked her about the legality of all of this, and she says not a whole lot.
Now, the president was musing about sending some of the most horrible people in this country down to that mega prison. You know, people that push ladies into subways and hit old ladies with baseball bats to the head. Is that legal to do? Is that something you're allowed to do?
Well, Jesse, these are Americans who he is saying who have committed the most heinous crimes in our country. And crime is going to decrease dramatically because he has given us a directive to make America safe again. These people need to be locked up as long as they can, as long as the law allows. We're not going to let them go anywhere. And if we have to build more prisons in our country, we will do it.
Right. That's what I thought.
But she never actually answers the question as to whether or not any of this would be legal. Instead, she just reiterates some Trump administration talking points because that seems to be working for them. Because again, who cares if something is illegal as long as the American people support it, as long as they're able to get away with it. So here is another clip from Fox and Friends where the hosts are speaking in support of Bukele's policies in El Salvador. His policies, which as I mentioned in the last story, they have been repeatedly flagged by international watchdog organizations for human rights violations. Take a look.
Look what's happening in El Salvador. They love this president down there because he has made it so much safer. You talk to anyone who is here from El Salvador, and they will say, when we go back home, it is so much safer. Right. They would bring money from America, and people would shake them down for that money. People who are working here legally or here citizens, they send money back home, and then their parents are in jeopardy. They have to live in poor conditions because if they show that they're getting money from their daughter who works in America, then they're at risk, but not anymore. The neighborhoods are cleaned up because of this president. So, and it's because if you get caught doing something illegally down there, you're thrown in these maximum security prisons, right, and you're treated the way you see these videos. If we did that here in America, maybe the crime would go down even more.
Well, and the president mentioned that yesterday. Yeah. They might do something with the homegrowns, people from the United States. I don't know exactly how that would work. More on that throughout the day.
Legally, that might be challenging.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cenk, if we didn't already live in a prison state, Trump of all people is trying to lock up more so-called criminals, and they're only so-called criminals because the Trump administration doesn't seem to think that due process is important anymore. But it is actually shocking to hear American newscasters discussing Bukele's policies, specifically regarding these prisons, and acting like this is something that we need to bring here to the United States, because again, this has been flagged by so many human rights organizations because there are clear violations here.
Yeah, so look, El Salvador's prisons are their business, not our business. So it's not wrong that Bukele's become popular in El Salvador and he's locked up a whole bunch of people and had human rights abuses, etc. That's for the good people of El Salvador to deal with. We have prisons here. We don't send US citizens to other countries because what, did we run out of prisons? Are our prisons weak and failing and everybody's constantly escaping from our prisons? No, our prisons are plenty tough. A lot of them are actually hellholes. But nobody, almost no one ever escapes from them. With our maximum security prisons are the best in the world in terms of security. So why do we need to send people to a foreign dungeon? We don't. And is it legal? It's not even close to legal. Of course it's not legal. Even Pam Bondi, who got the job for being a professional ass kisser to Donald Trump, couldn't quite fully kiss his ass on that one, because of course it's not legal to send US citizens. Okay, if you're on the right wing and you say, yeah, but I know, but they're really bad guys. That doesn't mean anything, guys. Like, they're really bad guys. They push someone into a subway. Okay, good. Then let's give them an attempted murder charge, or if the person was killed, a murder charge. Then let's have a debate about if that should be life in prison without parole, or that should be the death sentence. Those are legitimate debates you have inside the country, right? What is not legitimate is, oh, that was a bad crime, so let's just trash our Constitution and our laws, not do due process, pick up that person, send him to El Salvador. And by the way, now Trump says we can't ever get him back. Even if it's the wrong guy, we can't get him back. Okay, and so, oh, wait, you didn't do due process. Oh, turns out you picked up the wrong guy at the subway. The bad guy's actually out in the loose, and the good guy's in El Salvador dungeon, and you can't get him back. Well, it doesn't matter because we're getting the bad guys. No, that's against our Constitution, against our laws, for a very good reason. Due process is one of the pillars of Western civilization. It's so ironic that the people that think they're in favor of Western civilization are now saying, yeah, let's chop down Western civilization. Who cares about due process? Who cares about the courts? Who cares if you're a US citizen? Let's just break all the laws. It's just madness. So on that Fox News one, where they're like, oh, and did you know how bad MS-13 is? See, what they're doing is they're trying to trick you by conflating two different issues. Yes, MS-13 is terrible. Yes, the crimes that Trump was talking about are terrible. That's not the question at all. The question is, what are we going to do with our citizens? Okay, now if you're on the right and you're still not convinced, well, be careful what you wish for, because if Trump's policy that he's stating he loves, he's now said it 2 or 3 times super clearly, completely clearly, right? If that was in place earlier, the Biden administration could have sent all the January 6 guys to El Salvador. Bye-bye. And oh, sorry, can't get them back. Can't get them back. Oh, some of them were innocent? Who cares? Who cares? Oh, we didn't do due process. We just rounded up a bunch of the guys who went to the Trump rally. Some of them didn't even go to the Capitol. So what? We don't do due process anymore. We don't believe in the US Constitution anymore. We don't believe in Western civilization anymore. So what? I sent a bunch of innocent Trump MAGA guys to El Salvador. Oh, they got killed down there by the MS-13 inside that hellhole. That's so what? We don't do due process anymore. And if you say, well, okay, well, I know, but I really want to send some people down to El Salvador, but I see what you're saying about the January 6 guys. Wait, hold on, I got one better for you. And this is what I see screaming from the far right of MAGA all over social media. If they're convicted, so what? If they're convicted, so what? Okay? You know who was convicted? Donald J. Trump. He's a convicted felon. You can say, oh, that was lawfare and you're super mad about it, but he was just picked up accidentally. He wasn't the wrong guy. He had a whole trial and a jury of his peers found him guilty. And you can say, I hate that result. Doesn't matter, convicted. Oh, if you go to El Salvador, oh, he wants to come back and run for president. That's a shame. We can't bring him back. Nothing we could do. Well, I mean, he's a US citizen, who cares? You destroyed the Constitution, you lit it on fire. So, oh, you thought that it was just you guys. And by the way, is that what you think if you're on that side of the right? Oh, as long as we're getting rid of the Constitution, but it's okay, we'll just apply it to the left. We'll just apply it to people we hate. And then if the other side ever wins, we will bring the Constitution back. We want our rights back. Don't tread on me, right? But all of a sudden, when you're in charge, tread away, tread away. Who cares about the Constitution? Light it on fire. Now we're pro-dungeons. Okay, not exactly principled. Now, this is huge and very important. So I keep telling you on this show, hold on, blame Trump, blame the leaders, right? But let's see, do his voters actually agree with him? And I say, remember, there's hard right MAGA, and yeah, they're all over social media. They're the ones going, who cares? Screw US citizens, screw the Constitution, send them down to El Salvador, right? But then there's other portions of MAGA, and then there's the independents, and there's the people who voted based on inflation and immigration. So that whole spectrum, do they agree or do they not agree, all the Trump voters? So I asked online, So tons of people saying, yeah, they agree with Trump. A whole bunch of people saying they don't. I can't really quite tell. You can go at Cenk Uygur and see if you can tell what the percentage is there. I can't, right? But that's under my account, right? And my account is a complicated one. It's got independents, it's got right wing, it's got left wing, it's got everybody, right? Tim Pool, now he would claim he's not right wing, but I'd be surprised if there were a lot of non-Trump voters in Tim Pool's audience. So he did a poll on X. Take it for what it's worth. Definitely not scientific, but that's his audience that almost certainly greatly voted for Donald Trump. The overwhelming majority voted for Donald Trump. Over 21,000 votes as we stand right now live on the show, and 51% say the US should not send, we should not send US criminals to foreign prisons in any capacity. 49% say yes, send them. Is that good enough? Do we like that? 50-50? No, not nearly good enough. It should be 98-2, and 2 being, institutionalized, right? But 50-50 in a group that largely voted for Trump, saying no, he's wrong, and we should not send US citizens to that. Again, not definitive. It's just one data point. But so that gives me a little bit of relief that MAGA and all of Trump voters are not lockstep here. And that's super important, because in order for Trump to turn around from anything, it has to be very unpopular, and he has to lose a part of his voters and his base. And it looks like, for the moment being, just kind of on day 2 here, that even a lot of the guys who say, well, if he's undocumented, then I don't care, are saying if he's a US citizen, then we shouldn't. Tiny bit of relief on that. Now, it has to affect Trump. If it doesn't affect Trump and he starts sending US citizens to El Salvador, it won't matter. But my guess is, as we're already seeing in the national polling, his numbers are starting to go down, down, down. Why are they going down? Not because he lost the left, because he had already lost the left. That didn't change at all. He's starting to lose some of his voters. He's certainly losing independents, and his popularity is getting battered by these ludicrous, ridiculous, unconstitutional suggestions that he has.
Yeah, and the part that Pam Bondi wasn't saying in her answer to Jesse Waters was that as long as they can convince enough people that these brown-looking people are actually gang members and terrorists, then they can and will do what they need to eradicate the threat that they insist is a real threat. That's what she's saying, is that they have a directive now from the president to take care of the crime and the gang violence and all of the terrorism that's happening all around us, right? I didn't know, because I hadn't experienced it myself. I hadn't seen it. I haven't seen it in the news, but they keep telling us that this is a real, active, very dire threat that we're dealing with right now. So they're acting like these people are foreign spies from like an adversarial government that we're currently at war with, which is not the current situation, no matter how Pam Bondi tries to spin it. And even in those types of situations, suspending things like the Bill of Rights, like the Constitution, like due process, it's still highly controversial. So all of this rhetoric that's happening around whether or not we should even be sending American citizens without due process to a foreign prison, it's insane that we're even having polls where people are like, yeah, do it, just send them. Because if you get the audience, if you get the people scared enough of something that's out there, just some nebulous something that's out there that they themselves can't even pinpoint, then they will say, you know what, do what you gotta do, and I'm giving you full reign, and I'm not gonna get in your way.
Yep. All right, we got to take a break here, guys. When we come back, they're arresting other immigrants. This time, though, at the orders of the most important government in the history of the world, according to our government, which is, of course, Israel. Israel has ordered more arrests and deportations. We'll tell you about that when we return. back on TYT here. I got so many to get to here. Let's go to Super Chat. Hello, somebody wrote in. And remember that Hakeem Jeffries' first move after losing to Trump was to run to the tech bros and beg for millions from billionaires. That is very literally true. Foster just wrote in on Super Chat. Voted for Trump. Thanks to TYT's honest and open-hearted reporting, I have come to the light. Please do not give up on the right wing. We were misled. TYT is a lighthouse. Wow. Thank you, brother. Thank you. And thank you not just for saying that about us, but for being an open-minded American who actually listened to the facts, double-checked, figured out who was right or wrong, and didn't do it based on old biases and prejudices. I love that. Oh, I'm sorry. The full last sentence was TYT's a lighthouse for the politically lost. Well, that's beautiful. Foster, it's great to have you with us, man. Appreciate it. Deb Long wrote in, when Trump talks about sending homegrown to El Salvador, what he means is the left wing who dislike him, because he won't be sending MAGA there. Now, of course, and that's why I mentioned January 6th. You think he's going to send convicted criminals in January 6th to El Salvador? Of course not. Chutulu writes in, for any Trumpists here, remember the Central Park Five? Yeah, Trump libeled them as well. He said, yeah, they were convicted. And it turns out they were wrongly convicted. They found the right guy. His DNA was on the crime scene. There was no question they were innocent. And Trump said, who cares? Don't let him out of prison because they probably did something else. That's his mindset. That's why I voted against them. That's why I worked so hard to make sure that he didn't get elected, because he doesn't care what's right or wrong. He doesn't care what's true and untrue, what's legal and illegal, what's constitutional and unconstitutional. There's only one thing he cares about, and that's Donald Trump. I Love Broccoli wrote in, didn't Bukele eliminate the gangs he claimed to be afraid of, specifically the 18th Street Gang? Wasn't the 18th Street Gang a rival gang of MS-13? So look, I don't know all the particulars between how the 18th Street Gang and the MS-13 guys fought and which one came out on top in El Salvador. But you're not, brother, you're not wrong. I think he's right-wing from what I could tell from some of the comments. You're not wrong that Bukele did bring down crime, did bring down gangs in El Salvador. He did it in ways that were problematic. And then that's why I say, hey, that's El Salvador's business. If they're happy with him and they have a different laws and different constitution, I'm not their citizen, that's up to them, okay? But for us, as it affects us, I'm not sending somebody down to a dungeon where there's no human rights protections, no constitution, no nothing. And we're sending our citizens no way, let alone innocent people. Vivemis Korvidix just wrote in after joining, Yaz is so beautiful without even trying. So that's nice of you to say. We appreciate it, and thanks for being a new member. There you go. I appreciate it on your behalf, yes. Jessica K writes in, Jane, thank you for constantly reiterating that we cannot continue dogging the voters on the right. I live in northern Michigan, which is largely Republican, and I meet so many wonderful people who are woefully misled. They mainly want the same things we do, but are completely in the dark about how to get there. Keep spreading the love. Jessica, thank you for saying that. I love this audience, okay? Grok the Vote says, so Don Old, does this mean the guy who hit Nancy Pelosi's husband in the head with a hammer is being whisked away for some El Salvadorian R&R as you speak? Of course not.
This was my ass.
All right, back on TYT, Jen and Yaz with you guys. Next story is super important.
It is. Okay, so let's get into this next story. Yesterday, US Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested Palestinian Columbia University student Mohsen K. Madawi for his involvement in pro-Palestinian activism. And he is now facing deportation back to the war-torn occupied West Bank. So just like in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, Madawi is a green card holder who has been in the US for 10 years. So here's this, according to DropSite. Madawi grew up in a Palestinian refugee camp in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, where his childhood was shaped by the Second Intifada. He experienced significant personal losses, including the death of his best friend during a confrontation with Israeli soldiers when he was just 10 years old. He later studied computer engineering at Berzia University in Palestine before enrolling at Columbia University in New York, where he pursued studies in philosophy at the School of General Studies. So It's important to reiterate here, Madawi was a green card holder. He was not here on a student visa, and he was actually in the process of obtaining full citizenship, which ICE used to their advantage later, which we'll get to in a second. So, Cenk, what are your initial thoughts on this? Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I know where it's going, where Israel locks up everyone who disagrees with them here in America. So first they started with student visas. Then they went to legal residents who have green cards, who have every right to be here, every right to freedom of speech. The Supreme Court has declared that over and over and over again. Well, now, not unless you disagree with Israel, in which case you'll be whisked away by masked men. And they're thinking of sending him back to the West Bank, where if settlers murder him, there's no chance they'll be convicted. They have kangaroo courts there where they have 99% acquittal rates. So we're gonna send this guy to his death, potentially, because Israel said no one should disagree with Israel. Here in America, your freedom of speech? Well, the Supreme Court says resident aliens that are legal residents here in America have the same exact rights to freedom of speech as US citizens. So if they no longer have that right, we no longer have that right. And we all have to bow our heads to that foreign government. Oh, sorry, oh no, okay, keep slaughtering. You haven't murdered enough Palestinian children. That's what we're supposed to say? Nah, I'm not a dog of another government, okay? I don't care who the government is. So they're gonna keep kidnapping, snatching these people off the streets so that, well, I was about to say Joe Biden, it's also true of Joe Biden. He didn't do this much. This is a whole nother level by Trump, right? But Joe Biden said, well, hey, whatever Israel says, blank check, blank check, blank check. Keep slaughtering, keep slaughtering. Now Trump comes in, oh, I can't believe Joe Biden's for war. Oh, me, yeah, I love war if Israel's doing it. Keep slaughtering, here, blank check, blank check. Oh, Israel, you want more because your Adelson family gave me $337 million in legalized bribes. For that kind of money, he's like, Israel, what do you need? You need me to shred the US Constitution, light it on fire so that all American citizens have to serve Israel and no one is allowed to dissent? No problem. Give me the Constitution, light it on fire. As long as you give enough bribes to Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, all of them. I'm sick of this country serving another country. I don't give a damn what country it is. So now we're gonna tell you more about this brother. And you're gonna find out even their BS excuses of, we are not doing this for Israel. We are doing it because we are so concerned about anti-Semitism. Is that right? Well, you picked the wrong guy because that guy's spoken out against anti-Semitism. So as you'll see here, but they don't care. I think, yeah, is that they partly picked this guy knowing he's on tape speaking out against anti-Semitism so they could make it clear to everyone. You see that we all know that that's a BS excuse. We're telling you, this is our sign to all American citizens. You must bow your head to Israel. If you don't bow your head to Israel, it doesn't matter how obvious our lies are. We will arrest you, deport you, or do whatever Israel commands of us. Tell them more about the case.
It really does feel like gaslighting, and I know it's obviously nothing new, but it's appalling that this foreign country has so much power and influence in this country, the most powerful country in the world, supposedly. So anyway, let's get into why Madawi was targeted. According to The Intercept, Madawi was one of the leaders of the pro-Palestinian movement at Columbia University following the October 7th attacks. So here's the reporting. It says in December 2023, Madawi asked Columbia professor Shai Davidai, a controversial pro-Israel figure at the school, to go get some coffee. The two met, but Madawi later said that Davidai left in the middle of the coffee. Less than 2 months after the meeting, Davidai posted a video of Madawi to Twitter in a thread characterizing him and other protest organizers as anti-Semitic and pro-Hamas. So here is that video and tweet. Take a look. So Madawi also appeared on a December 2023 edition of 60 Minutes to discuss anti-Semitism on college campuses. So criticizing Colombia's previous president, Manouche Shafiq's response to the attacks and stating pro-Israel factions were trying to silence those who were protesting the genocide. But to be clear, he was not anti-Israel. He continuously emphasized empathy and dialogue as, quote, pathways to justice and peace, per the drop site. So Madawi recalled during a walkout that occurred on November 9th, one person was yelling death to Jews, and this is how he responded. He said, I was shocked, and I walked directly to the person and I told him, you don't represent us because this is not something that we agree with. And I took the megaphone and I gave a speech and I said, we here are conscious, educated students, and we know how to separate right from wrong. What this guy has said is clearly anti-Semitic against Jews. To be anti-Semitic is unjust. And the fight for the freedom of Palestine and the fight against anti-Semitism go hand in hand, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's what he said on 60 Minutes. Madawi helped lead the pro-Palestine movement at Columbia until last spring, which is when the gears started to shift and things started to focus more on building bridges with Jewish and Israeli communities at the university. However, he was still a target for multiple Zionist groups like the Canary Mission and Beitar, which later worked with the Trump administration to identify students they wanted to deport. So here's more. Even before his friend and fellow Columbia activist Mahmoud Khalil was arrested by immigration authorities, Madawi asked university administrators to help him find a safe place to live so that he would not be taken by ICE agents, according to emails reviewed by The Intercept. The school did nothing in response, Madawi said. When Khalil was abducted by ICE last month, Madawi sheltered in place for 3 weeks, only coming out when he was scheduled for his citizenship test. And remember when we said earlier that ICE would use this to their advantage, so here's that. Earlier this month, Madawi received an email from USCIS notifying him that he was scheduled to conduct an interview to obtain his US citizenship. He said he was expecting the interview to take place in December or January, in line with the expected timeline to move from his green card status through the naturalization process. And then in the middle of his appointment, guess what happened? ICE agents came in and arrested him. Madawi was smart enough though, and he prepared himself for this. He warned Vermont lawmakers like Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Peter Welch, and Representative Rebecca Balint about the situation. And they all responded, and they were on standby pending the appointment. So Cenk, at least he's getting some support from somewhere. He got zero support from Columbia, even when he said this is a threat, they're threatening me. Columbia did nothing to protect him. So he had to call in Bernie Sanders for backup.
Yeah, look, I'm Columbia alumni. I went to Columbia Law School, and I'm disgusted by some of the other alumni and some of the so-called professors there that secretly are working for like they're the Israeli thought police. They got their little groups, and they're like, who should we get next? Okay, it's like a McCarthyite, disgusting group of people who are like, okay, any Israeli critic must be driven out, right? Oh, he says anti-Semitism is unjust. He's the guy who's defending us. Oh, who cares? Who cares? Because this isn't about Jews in America. A lot of Jews were in the peace protests. This isn't about being Jewish at all. This isn't about anti-Semitism at all. It's a giant lie, and this case proves that it's a lie. It's all about everyone bow your heads to Israel. How dare you try to, what, you think because you're in America, you have freedom of speech? You think you could criticize almighty Israel? When you're in America, no, we own this place. I'm not saying it, they're saying it. They're saying, go round up anyone who dares to criticize that foreign government. The people at Canary, like the Canary Mission group, the Beitar group, this professor who goes and meets with a guy who's trying to help on anti-Semitism, leaves in the middle of a meeting when a guy's trying to reach out and help and says no, and then goes back and rats him out like some sort of disgusting brown shirt. Yeah, I said it. If you don't want to be called a brown shirt, don't act like a brown shirt. And you do not represent all Jews in America at all. So stop speaking for them. So even, look guys, there are people who I get super mad at, and you guys have seen it with Bill Maher. massively pro-Israel. I don't mind people being pro-Israel. That doesn't even mean anything. I want it to be a safe haven, okay? And I want two independent, beautiful, loving states. The problem is when people like Bill Maher then say, yeah, but the war crimes of Israel, whatever. They're always an excuse. The Palestinians had it coming. The Palestinians and the Muslims are savages, etc. I can't stand Bill Maher's opinions on Israel. But even Bill Maher says, no, what are we doing? We're rounding people up like this in America because of what they think? No. Thank you, Bill, thank you. But we need the Bill Mahers of the world because these guys aren't gonna listen. The politicians aren't gonna listen to us. We haven't even bribed them. I haven't sent a check to Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Why would they listen to me, right? Why would they listen to any of us? The only options are some other government comes in and finds a way to funnel money, just like Israel is, and they bid higher than Israel, purchase our government. I hate this system. I don't want Saudi Arabia coming in and buying our government either. I don't want the Russians doing it, I don't want the Chinese doing it, and I don't want Israel doing it. By the way, all those other people, you can say anything you want about them. The Russians, the Chinese, the Norwegians, the Americans, Christians, Muslims, it doesn't matter. You can say anything you want here in America because we got freedom of speech, except not Israel. So since they won't listen to us, the politicians, and those awful, terrible people at Colombia, and now the administration bowing their heads to Trump and saying, yes, sir, we'll rewrite the Middle Eastern history. We'll say Israel's right about everything. We'll never be honest. I swear to God, we'll never be honest. We'll let you run this stupid department. You're trashing our diplomas. What a waste, it's worth nothing now. Because now Colombia's turned into Israeli propaganda central and cowards who bow their heads to Donald Trump. And then quietly, apparently in their secret little groups, these alumni and these professors scheming, yes, take away all the Israeli critics. Make sure that no one dares disagree with Israel. God damn it, man. This is America. And if you don't like it, then why don't you take your ass and go back to Israel? You already do enough damage over there. You already slaughter enough Palestinians there. You already enslaved them for 58 years. When are you gonna let them go? This would all change if those disgusting far-right Israeli Netanyahu supporters would for 1 second, just 1 second think, what if those Palestinian children were Israeli children? If they were Israeli children and someone had just slaughtered 15 to 20,000 Israeli children, who wouldn't Israel nuke? Who wouldn't Israel absolutely annihilate? They would see such unreal rage. But when they see the Palestinian children, they go, who cares? Who cares? They're just children. So we bombed them and the concrete fell on their head and crushed their skulls. We lit them on fire with our bombs. Who cares? The only thing that matters is almighty beloved Israel. The real crime is not killing those children, not enslaving those people for 58 years and taking more and more and more of their land. Nothing matters. The only thing that matters is if you criticize Israel, we'll deport you, we'll arrest you, deport you, have mass men kidnap you in the middle of the street, take you out of America, send you to the West Bank, where likely Israel will murder that poor guy. And they've murdered now how many Americans there? And Biden didn't care, Trump didn't care. As long as the check's clear, they never care. And one last thing, just like Badawi said, and he was 100% right, do not ever assume that somebody thinks that because they're Jewish. That is totally and utterly wrong. Those are our Jewish American brothers and sisters, okay? Even if they're supporters of Israel, don't assume it. Look, Bill Maher is an enormous supporter of Israel, and he doesn't agree with this. But for the people who say, yes, snatch up people from the streets of America and arrest and deport them because they didn't bow their heads to Israel. Well, yeah, okay, you're the bad guys. And if you say, no, we can't be the bad guys. We're right-wing Israelis, and we have the most moral army in the world. And when we slaughter people 40 times larger, now 50 times as many innocent civilians murdered by Israel as murdered by Hamas. When Hamas does it, they're terrorists. When we do 50 times worse, we're the most moral army. Those people are disgusting, disgusting. Go back to Israel, go serve the country you want to serve, not America. We shouldn't be deporting those folks. By the way, I wouldn't deport these people either, because I believe in freedom of speech. I'm not a hypocrite like these disgusting people who are trying to get us to serve a foreign government. I'm done with it. All right, sorry, Yaz, that's all I got. We gotta go. It's so.
I do just really quickly want to wrap up the story for the audience. A federal judge has already signed a temporary restraining order to keep Madawi in Vermont while his case is pending, and his lawyers have filed a habeas corpus petition on Monday morning challenging the legality of his detention. So we will see what happens. We'll see if Congress is able to get involved, because this does involve a lot of really ethical issues and constitutional issues, and of course, this guy doesn't deserve any of this. So.
Yeah, our Constitution is crystal clear, and the Supreme Court has been crystal clear. It applies to legal residents like Madawi, okay? So if you want to trash our Constitution, get the hell out of our country. Get out, get out, get out. Okay, go to a dictator, like an authoritarian, gross government as the current government of Israel, who says, oh yeah, we got the best democracy in the Middle East. I mean, we have 5.5 million people imprisoned. And we started the starvation of all Palestinians in Gaza 6 weeks ago, and we hope they die of malnutrition and they starve to death. But we're a democracy. No, you're not, okay? So if you want to have junk laws and a tyrannical government that is deeply racist and bigoted, good, there's a country called Israel for that. Not here, not here, Young Turks.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this. Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now.
To work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
we'll see. We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? So now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, easy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone?
Okay, sorry, I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me to Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Idarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the two people here said that their moms are both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it. We will settle it.
She's cute. I didn't say that about Laura Ingraham.
Scandal at TYT. Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good boss.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
I started using the word, the groceries.
Back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Sharon Reed with you guys. Sharon's on Rebel HQ. Check that out when you get a chance. How you doing, Sharon?
I think I'm doing pretty well.
All right.
How about you?
I came in a good mood in that these stories got me riled up. They got me riled up.
Oh, Cenk riled up. That's a good show.
Yeah, well. All right, well, but we are going to do Operation Joy later for the members, and people have started writing in already. I love it. And so we'll lighten it back up. But in the meanwhile, we've got more stories for you guys. So Sharon, take it away.
Okay, Cenk, fired up. Dire Ed, we'll call this one. We'll watch this.
The Trump administration's decision to cut $2.2 billion from Harvard tonight makes clear just how essential this lawsuit is and how critical this fight is, and why it's so important for Harvard and really every university in the country to take a stand at this critical moment, because this is a clear, unquestionable violation of First Amendment rights. It's a transparent effort to change what is taught, what we say in our classrooms, what we teach our students, to make sure that the only things that are actually said on university campuses are things that the Trump administration wants to hear.
Pretty much sums it up. So today, the Trump administration, federal government announcing that it is freezing more than $2 billion in funding for Harvard after the school refused to meet the Trump administration's demands, making them the first college to openly defy Donald Trump and his wishes. We'll explain exactly what those demands were, but Cenk, first thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I went to Columbia Law, and I'm now embarrassed that I did. And I'm grateful that at least one university has decided to fight back for our rights and not to get bullied by this authoritarian leader, Donald Trump, and not to get bullied by a foreign government named Israel. Of course, Israel is behind all of this, and they're trying to make sure that no one is allowed to speak on American campuses against Israel. We'll explain the details to show you, how they're doing that and how Harvard's fighting back. And I'm glad that the battle is joined.
Apparently, it will be quite the battle too. Trump is punishing the elite college for not complying with instructions laid out in a demand letter from his administration's joint task force to combat anti-Semitism. At least that's what they're saying the motivation is. The 10 demands, which the administration says are aimed at addressing anti-Semitism on campus, include restricting the acceptance of international students who are, quote, hostile to the American values and institutions. The administration also wants a third party to audit programs that it says fuel anti-Semitic harassment or reflect ideological capture. NBC News with, it's a quote. Additionally, they demanded that the university eliminate all DEI programs, all of them gone, just like that. Reduce the power of students and faculty members over the university's affairs. Report foreign students who commit conduct violations immediately to federal authorities. They're gonna need more manpower. Bring in an outside party to ensure that each academic department is, quote, viewpoint diverse. It's interesting they use the word diverse in that circumstance. The administration didn't actually define what it meant by viewpoint diversity, but it's obviously implied that they want more conservative, Trump-friendly opinions on campus. Here's how Harvard law professor Andrew Crespo, who's also involved in the lawsuit against the Trump administration, described Donald Trump's demands.
Anti-Semitism is vile and has no place in this country. But these actions are not about anti-Semitism, they're about authoritarianism. And we know that because we can see what the Trump administration has said and what it has done. The Trump administration's demand letter that was made public today and sent to Harvard on Friday asks for things that have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It requires us to try to change who is hired, what we teach in our classrooms, what we say in our research. It says that it is trying to create ideological rebalancing. That's code, and actually not even code. It's pretty transparent. That is a message that's saying, we don't like what you're teaching. We want you to teach something more to our liking. And unless you do that, we're going to try to bankrupt your institution.
And so early on Monday, Harvard responded. They said, no, we're not going to do it. They announced that they would be rejecting the demands, writing this on X. The university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. Neither Harvard nor any other private university can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government. Harvard President Alan M. Garber called the demands unprecedented, denouncing them as an attempt to control the Harvard community by policing the viewpoints of students, faculty, and staff members. In response to that defiance, the administration's Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism said $2.2 billion in multi-year grants and $60 million in multi-year contract value would be frozen to the Ivy League university. They argued that Harvard's refusal showed their entitlement mindset. Donald Trump himself went even further, writing this on Truth Social. Perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest, all caps. Now, all the ramifications of the funding freeze are not totally clear, not yet, but Harvard says it will have an impact on their ability to do scientific research, work on technological developments too. Trump administration has also threatened many other colleges nationwide with funding cuts if changes in school policy weren't made, including Columbia, Cornell, UPenn, Northwestern, and others. But while Trump is trashing Harvard, they're getting support from some others, including former President Barack Obama, who wrote this on X today. Harvard has set an example for other higher ed institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Let's hope other institutions follow suit. 876 faculty members at Yale, their Ivy League institution, also published a letter to their leadership expressing support for standing up to the Trump administration. While it didn't mention Harvard explicitly, it did say this: we stand together at a crossroads. American universities are facing extraordinary attacks that threaten the bedrock principles of a democratic society, including rights of free expression, association, and academic freedom. We write as one faculty to ask you to stand with us now. That faculty letter to the Yale administration. It's a brilliant and devious move. As you mentioned earlier in the segment, Jen, this is not about anti-Semitism. It's about bullying control. It's about what Trump wants, but it's a brilliant and devious move to put it in that cocoon, if you will, because it confuses some Americans. Other Americans just say, oh yeah, that's a good thing. We don't want this on our college campuses. And others, if they disagree, once you use that word, they're too afraid to even stand up and say something. What do you think about Harvard and the support? And maybe this could open the floodgates. I don't know. I know some people who work at some other Ivy League institutions in the administration. And last I checked in with them, they were cleaning up their act to make sure that there was no mention of DEI and some other things.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but God bless Harvard. And the administrators at Columbia should be eternally ashamed. What a bunch of cowards. And any other group that works with the Trump administration to limit academic freedom. There's two different issues here, guys. So there's the attack on all of Israel's critics, and then there's the attack on academic freedom itself. So on the Israeli critics, that has been proven to be the idea that let's break down the joint task force on combating anti-Semitism. Number one, let's note for the record that there is no task force on combating anti-Muslim points of view in America, or anti-Christian, or anti-Hindu, or Buddhist, or anything. The only thing that apparently matters, I'm not the one saying it, they're the ones doing it, is anti-Semitism. Now, if it was actual anti-Semitism, at least I'd care that they're getting rid of anti-Semitism. I'd say you should do the other ones as well, but don't impinge on anybody's freedom of speech. That's a tough balance to draw, right? Where you combat it with your own words and say why anti-Semitism is so bad and so is Islamophobia, et cetera, right? But they're not doing any of that. Instead, they're rounding up people, not just based on whether they're anti-Semitic. They haven't proved anti-Semitism literally against anyone they have rounded up yet. Right now, I'm talking about the students that are being arrested and deported, and we did a story about Madawi, another Palestinian that was here going to school at Columbia. He was arrested, and he might be deported to the West Bank, and he spoke out against anti-Semitism. He said it on TV. He said that during the protests, he couldn't have been clearer that he was against and really strongly against. When somebody was doing something that was anti-Semitic, he stepped up and said that's not who we are and they don't represent us, and he fought against anti-Semitism. So that proves that this task force is a giant lie. And so here's the reality of it. And mainstream media doesn't tell you this because they love corruption, they love money in politics, and they think any discussion of it is unacceptable because where does all that corruption go and all that money in politics go? It goes straight into their pockets because it goes into ads in media. It pays all of their salaries. So what they don't tell you is that Sheldon and Miriam Adelson have given Trump $337 million in political contributions, let alone all the other ways that money is being funneled to Trump through meme coins, et cetera. But for sure, he's taken over $300 million in legalized bribes. And so he is serving his donors. In that particular case, Miriam Adelson is an Israeli. She's also an American, but she's literally an Israeli citizen. And she is super hard right-wing Netanyahu supporter, seems to absolutely love the genocide and ethnic cleansing that's going on in Gaza. And hence, she has ordered Donald Trump, anyone opposed to it must be rounded up, okay? And she doesn't care, and Trump doesn't care about First Amendment, freedom of speech, our Constitution. No, if a donor commands you to serve a foreign government, Trump will serve that foreign government. And that's what he's doing by attacking Columbia, Harvard, and all these other schools. No one is allowed to speak out against Israel, okay? In America, we're gonna tolerate that, that's disgusting. Okay, number two is the attack on academic freedom. So we've talked about this on the Young Turks before. I think some of the DEI programs, of course, are great, et cetera, in terms of bringing actual diversity to places, and some I think have overreached and overstepped. And it's case by case. And you could show me DEI programs where I'd say, yeah, I'm not in favor of that one, or I would curtail this part of it. But I would do that within an organization. I would make a case for it. We would go through the process, et cetera. But if somebody said, even on a program I didn't agree with, that the government is stepping in and telling colleges, you are not to have academic freedom, you will get rid of that DEI program, not because it's right or wrong, but because the government commands you, and you do not have any freedom. You cannot set your own rules. You must listen to whatever the thought police in Washington say, and you will do not factual correctness, but political correctness. And that is exactly what this is. There's no argument against it. If you're a MAGA guy who loves Trump and will do anything and that he tells you to do and support anything he supports, and you're ready to light the Constitution on fire on behalf of Israel, etc. Well, you can do all that, but you can't claim this isn't political correctness. At Columbia, they're taking over the Middle Eastern department, and they are not allowing them to actually give the real history of the Middle East. Now it has to be pre-approved by Israeli supporters what propaganda is allowed at Columbia in terms of teaching history. Well, even if you agree with that horrific policy, you can't say it's not political correctness. It's literally the definition of political correctness. Columbia's program is factually correct, but it is not politically correct because it doesn't serve Israel. So it has now been changed and it will serve Israel. And Harvard is saying no. And by the way, there's tons of Jewish administrators, professors, students at Harvard, and there was tons of them inside the peace protests at Harvard, Columbia, etc. This isn't about our brothers and sisters who are Jewish Americans, okay? And some of our best fighters for peace, for academic freedom, and for our Constitution are Jewish Americans. This is about one government controlling another government and saying no criticism will be allowed, and you'll even take it out of your textbooks. You'll take it out of your curriculum. You won't allow anyone to have any diversity of thought. That's why I laughed out loud when Sharon read that statement where the administration claimed they were doing this to avoid ideological capture. No, the whole point of this program is ideological capture. You must serve Israel, you must serve Donald Trump, you must serve the far right, and if you try to do anything else, we're gonna take $2.2 billion away from you and bully you and intimidate you like a bunch of thugs. By the way, one last thing on this. Harvard has a $53 billion endowment. If they didn't fight, I would have been furious. What do you raise a $53 billion endowment for if you don't use it in a circumstance like this, right? So, but they did, and they made the right decision, and I'm enormously thankful for it. And hey, look at that, President Obama came out of his mansion for a second. So thank you, President Obama. Agree 100%. I think you should, rally a lot of other people in that direction, but I appreciate that he at least made a statement on it.
Yeah, his alma mater. Listen, it's not Columbia anymore. Just like that, you capitulate. It's not elite anymore. If you cannot tell the truth and just go with that, just like that, to me, Columbia ceases to exist as this elite institution. A lot more to come, a lot more stories when we come right back after a social break.
Back on TYT, on Super Chat, in Guns We Trust said, Israel's disgusting by trying to silence us and the atrocities they're doing to the Palestinians. We should ditch them as an ally. I believe this is the devil manifesting in the physical world. You lost me on the last sentence, brother. So I think what they're doing is unacceptable, and I just said it was disgusting in the show. I don't think Israel's an ally at all, a special ally. They never even explained why they're such a special ally. I think Israel has pushed us into wars in the Middle East that have cost us trillions of dollars and tens of thousands of Americans that were casualties. They've cost us $300 billion. They've given us nothing in return except intelligence on which Muslims to murder in the Middle East. So they're the opposite of an ally. I agree with you on that. But don't talk about devil stuff. It's not the devil's work. They have nothing to do with the devil. It has nothing to do with religion. And the people of Israel are not especially evil or terrible or anything. Guys, it is a power dynamic. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. One of the reasons why we should take away money from Israel is not even to hurt Israel, but in the long run to help Israel, because the absolute power that we're giving them is corrupting them. They think that there are no bounds. And any group of people in that dynamic would do what they're doing. It's a part of humanity. So we're not helping them by empowering and enabling their worst instincts, which we all have. So this isn't about any ethnicity or religion at all. We just got to massively change this power dynamic that's hurting the entire world, let alone the poor Palestinians. All right, let's go to tyt.com. Helen 007 said, sickening how many law firms have bent the knee to mob boss wannabe Trump. Millions of dollars in free work. These firms are more concerned about their profits than democracy. So Helen, look, I understand, you're 100% right. I understand why those law firms did it, because Trump was saying, I'm gonna go after your clients and I'm gonna take away their money, government contracts and other things. So if they do that, the law firm could literally collapse, right? Because then clients are gonna say, well, I gotta go to a different law firm, because if I go to you, I'm gonna lose $400 million in government contracts or $4 billion in government contracts. But the reason why I still agree with you, Helen, is because, well, this is, especially if you're one of the giant law firms, are you going to show courage? This is when you're being tested, right? I understand the downsides. I understand the harm that comes from it. But if you don't stand up now, that means you are useless. That means all your, all this talk about how the law is so important, the Constitution is so important, etc. They never meant any of it. All they meant is the money is the most important thing. And by the way, those guys have tons of money, right, at those law firms. I know they'll run out if they don't have firms. I'm practical, I'm realistic. But at the same time, guys, with all that power and leverage that you have, if you don't fight now, and on top of that, they're not just not fighting, they're telling Trump they'll do. One of them is giving $100 million in free legal counsel to Trump. I mean, that's just borderline collaborator. So it's gross. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Sharon with you guys. And look, the Operation Joy comments are coming in. That's what we're gonna do for the members. We really lighten it up in the members only episode. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join to join us there. Totally different vibe there. But I'm just gonna do one here. There's a bunch of these comments, but I wanna do it during the main show here. Benjamin wrote in, sending Anna strength. Hope she's doing okay. You're holding the line fantastically, Cenk. Oh my God, it's Sharon and her awesome hair. Okay, Ben, we all appreciate it. We all do, but especially the good wishes to Anna.
Thanks,
all of you guys who wrote in on that, we love you for it. All right, Sharon, what's next?
Yeah, wishing Anna the best. This next one is about tax cuts and getting back to the middle class. An unlikely representative for that. Watch.
I think the bottom line is, when I think about the economy, I think it's time for congressional Republicans to start thinking about a tax cut for working people. I'm all for renewing the president's tax cuts. We've got to do that. But I think we probably need additionally to do something that's going to actually cut taxes, put money back into the hands of hardworking Americans. I think they need it.
Okay, that's Senator Josh Hawley, if you can believe it. Trying to brand himself as one of the few Republicans actually fighting for working class Americans. He published an op-ed calling on Republicans to, as he describes it, get back to their roots, give the working class historic tax cuts. We're gonna get to what Hawley wrote, more details in just a moment, but Cenk, what do you think about this side of Hawley? Can we trust it? Is it authentic? Can't be in his mind, but this is not the Josh Hawley that I'm used to or we're used to.
Yeah, so normally what Republicans do is they say, oh, we want to do these tax cuts for small businesses. And then the tax cuts that actually pass are for giant corporations. So that's just total propaganda. They don't mean a word of it. And don't get me wrong, Hawley's still in favor of that. You heard him in that clip saying, I mean, we got to renew the Trump tax cuts, the ones that were enormous for corporations, enormous for donor class, for the elites, etc., and the richest people in the world, okay? So, but he's adding in a layer of tax cuts that would actually be for the average guy. That's why this is shocking. So is it genuine? I think it partly is genuine, and I'm gonna tell you why in a minute. There's a really good reason why, but let's give you the rest of the story and then we'll talk about that.
Okay, let's get to this new op-ed Hawley penned for the Washington Post this morning. Here's what he wrote. Time was Republicans knew how to do tax cuts. Reagan-era columnist Robert Novak once quipped, God put the Republican Party on earth to cut taxes. But Republicans in Washington these days could use a refresher course. The negotiations over President Donald Trump's big, beautiful budget bill have to date included surprisingly little talk of tax cuts for the people who need them most. America's working class. These are the people who make less than $80,000 per year. These are the people who delivered an electoral victory for Trump. And these are the Americans Washington policy types have largely forgotten for a generation. Republicans should remember them now and deliver for them the largest tax cut in our lifetime. Now, Hawley argues Republicans should make the largest income tax credits available to any American who pays the payroll tax. These tax credits include home mortgage deduction, child tax credit, and the charitable deduction. Hawley added this, these popular tax credits provide billions in tax relief every year, but as it stands, you have to earn a considerable amount of money and pay a considerable amount of income tax before these credits become fully available. Yet 2/3 of Americans pay more in payroll taxes than they do in income taxes. And most working class Americans pay little or no income tax at all. If you're unfamiliar with what the payroll tax is, it is the percentage that comes out of your paycheck. It's that large number each cycle to finance things like Social Security and Medicare. In the United States, the largest payroll taxes are a 12.4% tax to fund Social Security and a 2.9% tax to fund Medicare, for a combined rate of 15.3%. Half of payroll taxes, 7.65%, are remitted directly to employers, with the other half withheld from employees' paychecks. Now, this amounts to $1 trillion. $1 trillion the government takes of this tax each year, according to Hawley. So there's more from the senator, the op-ed. For working people, the bottom line is despite the chunk taken out of your paycheck every few weeks, you don't qualify for the generous tax relief upper income earners receive. Republicans should fix this now. Make the home mortgage interest deduction, the child tax credit, the charitable deduction available against the payroll tax. And Hawley includes a few examples of how this could help his own constituents in Missouri, including a pastor in a small town in Missouri with 6 children. He states under his proposal, on his annual salary of $80,000, he would save $6,500 plus a year. Real money. Allow Americans earning a wage and paying the payroll tax to claim these credits to offset their tax liability. Every working family could use the money, and they deserve it. They earned it, after all. I guess what I'm wondering here, it sounds good, I think. Who's his audience, though, Jack? Is he doing this for some future to stand out in a Republican field politically? Is he doing this to convince fellow Republicans who won't listen to him privately? Who do you think his audience is?
Yeah, I think that he senses that the country is going towards populism, and this is his effort to go towards populism. And so I think he's gonna run for president. And he thinks the lane is the one that Trump created. Now, the difference between Hawley and Trump is twofold. Number one, Hawley is actually a somewhat real populist, as opposed to Donald Trump, who's a completely fake populist. So why do I say Hawley's a real populist? Or at least partially a real populist. So number one, he stopped taking corporate PAC money. And once you stop taking corporate PAC money, you've seen me tell you this, and now you're seeing the results, right? I told you ahead of time, once they stop taking it, they get more and more honest and start serving more and more voters. Because when you take corporate PAC money, you're incentivized, literally to the tune of millions and tens of millions of dollars, to serve those corporate donors. Now he's not getting any money from corporate donors, So he doesn't have to serve them anymore. So then as a politician, what conclusion do you logically draw if you're not worried about the donor money anymore? Oh, right, the voters. I should worry about the voters. Because you were supposed to get the donor money to be able to convince the voters to vote for you. But now when you don't have to worry about that, you just focus on it. So when he focused on the voters, he realizes, wait a minute, most of the voters aren't getting anything from this tax cut, Trump's tax cut. And yeah, that's an old Republican trick. Josh Hawley's smart. It's not like he didn't know they were doing that earlier. And it's not like he didn't sign up for that. He did sign up for it and he's still supporting it, right? But at the same time, he realizes later, people are gonna realize that we screwed them. So now, these tax cuts that he's proposing have no chance of passing. Why? Because they're actually good. Actually, I would have a issue with the payroll one. I'm gonna come back to that in a second. But the child tax credit and some of the others that he's proposing are good, actual tax cuts that goes to average American instead of the corporations, et cetera. And he's a Republican senator. And I don't mind saying that because I don't give a damn who does the right thing. I don't care what label they attach to themselves, right? So if Josh Hawley becomes the most genuine populist in the Senate, great. Then I'll support that things that he says in that direction, right? So I know a lot of other people are tribalists, so they won't ever do it. Even if he proposes bills that they love, they'll say no, just because he's proposing it, he has the wrong letter on his helmet, I'm opposed to him. I'm not in that camp. But in doing so, what he's doing is he's admitting what we've been saying all along, which is, yeah, these giant tax cuts are all for the rich. They're not gonna help you at all, okay? I'm proposing tax cuts that would help you. I know they're not gonna pass, but later when I'm running for president, I'll say, hey, remember, I'm the one guy on the Republican side that actually proposed tax cuts that would help you and that didn't, unlike the other tax cuts, didn't rob you blind, right? So that's why he's positioning himself that way. And the fact that he's untethered from the corporate donors allows him to do that. And so I think it's a very smart play and I think it makes sense. So the caveat that I added is, I wouldn't cut payroll taxes because if you do that, you're undermining the money that Social Security and Medicare are collecting. And if you do that, at some point, they're gonna then try to topple Social Security and Medicare and say, oh, golly gee, we didn't have enough money for it. So now you guys are all back on the streets and on your own, et cetera. And I don't want any piece of that.
It's interesting, just looking at the numbers, I just was looking at Hawley and the contributions and yeah, it's stunning and a calculated move, but perhaps this is genuine for him, but as you said, though, no chance of passing, so we'll see. We're gonna take another quick social break and then we're right back.
All right, back on TYT here. Mike8484 wrote it on TYT.com. I own a small construction company and every year I have to be honest and pay a year's worth of taxes. I make under $100,000 a year. I'm actually paying more now than before. Should I just write off everything like the super rich? Look, brother, I'm not gonna tell you what to do with your taxes, but I will share in your frustration that so many good people do what's right and then never get anything in return, right? And so on the other hand, the super rich bribe all of our politicians and they get everything in return. So I am so frustrated. And the cause of all of the cancers in our politics is money in politics. That's what allows the drug companies and the private equity companies and foreign governments to screw us. The absolute main 98% of the reason is money in politics. Wang John says, they don't give a damn about real anti-Semitism because none of the people on the pro-Israel side have said a goddamn word about the KKK, Aryan Nation, neo-Nazis, or any of the other white supremacist domestic terrorist organizations who are well known to be anti-Semitic, held rallies, and have openly called for the extermination of Jewish people over and over again. It's all complete and utter BS. Wang John, that is a terrific point, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't think of that earlier as a way of fighting back against it. I'm going to use that in social media and on the show going forward. You're absolutely right. What is Charlottesville? The Jews will not replace us. Are all those guys getting rounded up? Oh no, that's okay. That's because that's actual anti-Semitism, so they don't care about that at all. They didn't say anything about Israel, so they're perfectly fine. There's, oh God, the Trump administration and all the neocons in it are such liars. Melvin Mike 4TYT says, thank you, Cenk, thank you, Yaz, from the first hour. Thank you, TYT Network, thank you, TYT Army. You're the last bastion of truth and media. The tide is turning away from corporate tyranny, and you are all to blame. That's a funny ending. But thank you, brother. Really, really appreciate it. Ann Betta said, Cenk, can we get a shout out? My real young Turk, Shehan, and I are celebrating our 20th anniversary today. We love TYT. Well, we love you right back, Ann Betta and Shehan. Happy anniversary. That's great news. Love it. Also from the first hour, these are Grok and Dragon said, sending my best wishes and positive vibes to Anna and her family. I hope the intervention was successful and everyone recovers satisfactorily. Thank you guys. You're all very thoughtful. I really appreciate that. Ivan Yer, the Dragon says, I wonder how many Americans have considered what it would mean if they had no protections in foreign countries because they aren't citizens. I'm guessing they wouldn't be too cool with the idea that they could be picked off the street and thrown in a gulag with no hope of legal representation. It's just madness. Yeah, think about it, guys. If you went to Paris for a vacation and the French government was like, oh, you're not a French citizen, so you don't have any rights, so we kidnapped you and sent you to a prison in El Salvador. So what? You're not a citizen, right? That would be insane, and that's some equivalent to what we're doing here because people are saying, so what, they're not citizens. It's a great point. Salvi Dragon says, I hate that the only thing the public knows about El Salvador is MS-13, violence, corruption, and now concentration camps. Mi gente there and here are beautiful, friendly, and hardworking. Bukele, the coolest dictator, hitched his horse to the wrong wagon. Totally agree with you. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Sharon with you guys, and Ray Drock for now. Thank you for gifting 5 memberships on YouTube. And Londa Mall is one of our members on YouTube, and I'm going to give a quick shout out here. She says, I'm not going to be on Operation Joy tonight, but my 4th grandchild was born yesterday. Well, that's beautiful. That's a joyous moment. I love that you shared it with us. All right. By the way, here, I'm going to unveil it in the bonus episode or show you guys it, but I'll say it now. We're sharing our joy stories at tyt.com/joy. I started it, and I'm going to try to check it as much as humanly possible. Go in there and write things that you love and that has brought you joy. So I'll see you guys in there in that discussion chat as well. All right, Sharon, what's next?
Boy, we need that now more than ever. Finally, it's here. We're calling this one Meta Monopoly. Will they finally get what some believe is coming to them? Watch.
Are you surprised that this case is here? Which is to say that one of the things we've seen over the last couple of months is that Mark Zuckerberg has made a very aggressive effort to get closer to this president. He's been very supportive of this president. There had been some speculation that behind the scenes he was pushing for either some kind of settlement or for the case effectively to get withdrawn.
I'm glad to see that it's gotten to this point and that the various efforts by Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg to make the case go away on the eve of trial were not successful.
So it's on. It's been a long time coming, but the Federal Trade Commission's antitrust lawsuit against Meta, which was kicked off during the first Trump administration, finally began yesterday. So he couldn't avoid it altogether. Mark Zuckerberg has tried very hard to convince the second Trump administration to drop the case, but so far, as you heard there, no luck. We're about to break it all down in detail, but Cenk, I understand that, and sometimes you surprise us, you have potentially controversial take on all of this.
Yeah, me with a controversial, surprising take, never. Yeah, I think I'm on Meta's side on this. I don't think that they need to be broken up. I'm gonna explain why after you give us all the details, Sharon.
When they showed your picture there, it looked like, when someone's eating the canary or something and there's little feathers coming out of its mouth. It's kind of, you just had that look on your face. So here we go. Here's what you need to know about it. As mentioned, the case was brought in 2019. It was thrown out by a judge, so there was that. Revamped, refiled by the Biden era FTC, and is only now going to trial. FTC arguing that Facebook used a buy or bury strategy, kind of forcing the hand to acquire Instagram and WhatsApp for $1 billion and $19 billion, respectively. Those acquisitions, according to the FTC, choked out competition in the market, illegally created a social media monopoly. If the agency is successful, Meta could be forced to divest from Instagram and WhatsApp. FTC is using statements from none other than Zuckerberg himself to make the argument. And he actually had to take the stand yesterday. I bet that was interesting. In his opening remarks, Daniel Matheson, the FTC's lead litigator in the case, mentioned documents, including what he described as a, quote, smoking gun, February 2012 email, in which Zuckerberg discussed the rise of Instagram and the importance of, quote, neutralizing a potential competitor. New York Times with that detail. Another email, November, same year, 2012, to Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer at the time. Zuckerberg wrote this: Messenger isn't beating WhatsApp. Instagram was growing so much faster than us that we had to buy them for $1 billion. FTC showed Zuckerberg a 2011 email in which he wrote, quote, we really need to get our act together quickly on this since Instagram is growing so fast. Now, there is one potential obstacle for the FTC in this. They must successfully argue Meta would not have achieved the same success without acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook. And it's hard to prove that hypothetical scenario because here's the other rub for the FTC. According to Meta, the company has a lot more competition than what the FTC is claiming. FTC argued, Zuckerberg said in 2006 that Facebook was used to connect actual friends. Agency has argued that Meta has had a monopoly in social networking since 2011 and that Snapchat was among the only comparable platforms to Facebook and Instagram. Meanwhile, Meta is counting TikTok and YouTube among its competitors. Connecting friends and family is one of the core things the company does, Zuckerberg said. But Meta is also involved in the, quote, general idea of entertainment and learning about the world and discovering what's going on. Mark Hansen, Meta's lead litigator, said more than half of all engagement on Facebook and Instagram involved videos, which put Meta squarely in competition with TikTok, fastest growing short video app. When TikTok was momentarily shut down in January, Meta saw a surge of use on Facebook and Instagram, as did Google's YouTube, which showed the company had plenty of competition, he said. Andrew Ross Sorkin grilled Lena Khan on the specifics of the case, so let's watch that now.
What do you think of the argument that this is a case that is in the rearview mirror?
You have to remember that Facebook had actually done well for itself in the desktop market, but it was actually as smartphones were taking on that Facebook struggled to innovate and make that transition. And that's the moment at which it panicked. It saw companies like Instagram and WhatsApp experiencing astronomical growth. And that's the point at which it resorted to this buy or bury scheme.
In a world of AI, where all of a sudden OpenAI and ChatGPT, which basically didn't exist at the time, Gemini didn't exist, Anthropic, all of these things, X in its current formation, again, TikTok, these are things that weren't even on the table at the time. And so how can we look back at a deal that was made, as I said, years and years ago and suggest that they should be broken up today?
Well, look, there's no expiration date when it comes to the illegality of a transaction. I think there is a way in which the entire social networking ecosystem looks different today because Facebook was permitted to go out and make these acquisitions.
I don't know about that argument, Cenk. I mean, it seems like the marketplace took care of it. Now, with you on this, and it's just not. It's not the same as it was several years ago when the case was filed. Can this case survive? And give us more about why you think Facebook, Meta, doesn't need to be broken up.
So first, let me clarify. There are real monopolies in America, and monopolies are an enormous problem because they prevent a free market. They fight against capitalism, right? So if you're on the right, you should be against monopolies even more than the left is. That's what Adam Smith warned about. Also, Lena Khan had done a terrific job overall in fighting monopolies, and I support her. Now, having said that, I've said for now years and years, I think that focusing on the social media companies is totally the wrong direction. The drug companies have massive monopolies, and I could list many others, right? But in the case of social media, there is real competition. So I honestly, I don't know what they're talking about with Meta being a monopoly. So YouTube is bigger than Facebook is, and Instagram. TikTok is eating Instagram's lunch. So how are they a monopoly? Like, can they bully TikTok and YouTube and Snapchat and all the other, and X and Blue Sky and all these companies out of the market? No, they can't. Believe me, they're trying and they can. The so-called evidence was not at all convincing to me. They wanted to neutralize an opponent. Yeah, that's what happens in business. You compete in the marketplace, and there's a lot of different ways to neutralize an opponent. They mentioned how Instagram is growing so fast, and that's why they were thinking of buying it. Yeah, you think about buying growing companies. And that even that terminology, they wanted to buy or bury. That's what you do. That's what companies do. They try to beat the competition. They try to get more customers. And if they can't beat them, sometimes they buy them. Now, you can collect enough of them where you would turn into a real monopoly. If Facebook bought YouTube or Google or Apple, and then they started collecting, well, then we could have a massive problem. But you get rid of Facebook, you're still gonna have the rest, right? Or Meta, or break them up. And so Google bought YouTube years ago. That was a really smart purchase that turned out to be a great purchase for YouTube. Are we gonna say you were bad for making a great purchase? Now we're gonna take YouTube away from you. I just don't see the logic of this at all. Because in a monopoly, they dominate the market so much that consumers don't have a real choice. But I'm not forced to go on Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, and you're not either. And by the way, I should state in all of these cases that I have a bias here because I run Young Turks, and Young Turks is on Facebook and Instagram, etc. So I'm just being honest about that. But you see my genuine opinion on why I think what I do on this. I just don't see this case at all. Sharon, last word.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to agree with you that, but I also think that when the case was filed, perhaps they must have thought they could make a legal argument for it. The only thing that you said that perhaps I could find a way to argue with is the part about nobody forces you to go on these. It seems logical, it seems honest, but what about the kids and all the testimony that we saw on Capitol Hill and the studies that have been done that they control so much of the messaging, and maybe that's another issue. But it's important though to regulate them and figure out if someone or one of them perhaps has too much of the marketplace, too much influence. I know I'm kind of mixing issues, but that's the only place I could land. But I tend to agree with you.
Yeah. And I hear you on that. And by the way, I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying. You should always have regulation. The question is how much and what kind of regulation. So if you say to whether it's Meta or Google, or now Google's Alphabet or TikTok, oh, have at it, Hoss. Do anything you like. Take everybody's private information. Do whatever you want with the private information. No. We need regulations. And we need equal regulations, not, hey, TikTok has too many pro-Palestinian videos, so we're gonna do new and weird and unprecedented regulation on them. No, same regulation for all the companies. Let's be fair to everyone. And look, I want to go after a lot more monopolies, but I just don't think this is the right target. So you guys decide based on the information we gave you. All right, so obviously I'm over. We got to do Operation Join for the members. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. I've already got a bunch of great stories ready for you guys. So we'll do that when we return for the members.